Welcome back to the Republic Brothers Podcast. I'm Mike, and he's Matt, and this is episode 16. Today's November 25th, 2025. We're starting off with an update on Russia and Ukraine, then jumping into AOC's Turkey cash grab and ICE's new tracking system. Let's get into it. So Matt, kicking off the show today, we want to start with the Russia-Ukraine stuff that we ended the last episode with. There was a little bit of an update. I'll let you get into that in a second. Starting off, though, Ukraine has agreed to a peace deal. There's still some details that need to be finalized, but we may see the end of the Russia-Ukraine war. This comes after we talked about the 28-point peace plan in the last episode. We found out later that the peace deal may not have come from Trump at all. Representative Don Bacon said on X that the initial proposal by U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff was a, quote, surrender document for Ukraine that would have left it at the mercy of Russia for decades to come. He said the latest version was developed with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and input from Ukrainian and European officials, and that this was a much better plan for peace. Ukraine's decision to agree to the deal came hours after Russia launched an overnight attack on Kiev that killed at least 6 people and injured 13.
Well, I wouldn't say we've agreed to a peace deal, and anytime someone says there's still more points to hash out, you clearly haven't come to a full deal. But I agree with what Representative Bacon said. It was a terrible deal. Reports have come out over the last couple days that say President Trump may have been completely unaware of the 28-point peace plan, and Marco Rubio was also unaware. He found out about it from the press like we did. And Representative Bacon is right. It would have left Ukraine at the mercy of Russia, and it would have left NATO policy up to Russia, which would have made no sense. It was a terrible deal, still is. We haven't seen the new agreement, or at least the framework for it yet. I would hope most of it was scrapped and completely rewritten because of how bad the first deal was. Over the last few days, I've listened to radio, and they've kind of universally agreed that this is a bit of a gong show. The plan was leaked. It was not intentionally released, and that's a big part of the issues here. What was essentially a Russian wish list hadn't been discussed with the Ukrainians, and they kind of found out through the news as well. I still don't think we're any closer to peace, even though Ukraine may have come around on some of this. I'm a little surprised the Russians weren't enthusiastic about the deal. It was kind of a win-win for them. Take an agreement that was basically a surrender by Ukraine or keep fighting. Russia is currently taking ground in Ukraine, albeit somewhat slowly and with significant casualties, but that doesn't matter to the Russians. But we knew when Ukrainian President Zelensky said they were either going to lose their dignity or lose a key partner, that this probably wasn't going to go over well.
So what I'm not understanding is, if we thought we had a deal worked out that Russia and Ukraine both knew about the last time we recorded, why then would Russia go and attack Ukraine again and kill 6 more people? Or do you think it's possible that the plan we spoke about on the last podcast never made it to Ukraine or Russia? They had never seen it.
No, that plan was basically a Russian wish list. It had not been given to Ukraine. They had not signed off on anything. The war is still going. Russia did exactly what they've been doing since the start of the war. You'll notice that attack wasn't directed at a military base. The reason for that is simply morale. Russia's trying to pummel Ukraine into submission. We go through a bit of a cycle in this war where Ukraine tries to rebuild things and Russia shoots at them again. When we go into the winter, Russia shoots at energy infrastructure to try and freeze the Ukrainians into submission, because it does get quite cold in Ukraine. And then when the summer starts to roll around, They began shooting at things like agriculture to try and starve them into submission. You can look throughout Russian history. Stalin committed famine in what is now modern-day Ukraine and killed 4 million of his own people. The Russian Empire just doesn't care.
So what's the backstory with Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff? Who exactly is Steve Witkoff, and what is his job as the U.S. Special Envoy?
Essentially, his job is to negotiate deals. Some of those are trade deals. Some of those are peace deals. And he does that on behalf of President Trump, but he does operate somewhat autonomously. We're getting to a point now where words have been said, and apparently behind closed doors, Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff think of each other as stupid. From my perspective, Steve Witkoff is incompetent at his job. I say that because this plan leaked, and multiple people in the Department of War and the State Department had never even heard of the plan. I don't know if it was directly Steve Witkoff's fault that this leaked, but he might want to tighten up the ship so it doesn't happen again in the future. We've heard as well that apparently Witkoff, as well as Trump and Rubio, have come around to some of the positions that Europeans and Ukrainians have. And I'm going to guess some of that is boots on the ground. It's really the only way to prevent Russia from doing this again. And I don't mean American boots. I mean French or German or British. Europe is going through a rearmament. They kind of see the U.S. as an unreliable ally. The U.S. for something like 30 years has been drifting away from the rest of the world and kind of isolating itself. It's understandable why we would move in that direction. We are an ocean away from every single one of our foreign problems. But I do think we should take more initiative on the global stage. We could prevent some of these conflicts. It's not Trump's fault that a lot of this happened. Joe Biden in office was a complete disaster. I can't think of a single foreign policy win Biden had in 4 years.
Okay, well, we will check back in on that when we get some more news. I want to move on to a federal judge dismissing the charges against James Comey and Letitia James, finding they were illegitimate because they were brought by an unqualified U.S. attorney. So James Comey, as we know, the former director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, was indicted on 2 counts in September of 2025, making false statements to Congress and obstructing a congressional proceeding related to his 2020 testimony. Letitia James, New York's Attorney General, was indicted in October of 2025 on 2 federal counts, one of bank fraud and one of making false statements to a financial institution relating to a property purchase in Virginia. Yesterday, November 24th, 2025, federal judge Cameron McGowan Curry dismissed both criminal cases without prejudice. The key reason here, the interim U.S. attorney who secured the indictments, Lindsay Halligan, was found to have been illegally appointed and thus lacked authority to bring the charges. The judge ruled the appointment violated statutory limits on interim appointments, meaning all actions stemming from that appointment were invalid, which is just a fancy way of saying that this judge found a loophole to bail them out. She was basically tasked with going through the indictments to find something wrong with them. She found the needle in the haystack, but luckily the DOJ has announced it will repeal the ruling and they can still file the charges again.
Well, if you committed a crime, you should face the consequences of it. To me, it just sounds like some lawyers got something wrong. Without prejudice means that these charges can be refiled, so I'm not going to sit here and say the judge was trying to bail them out. I don't really see it that way. When you have a choice between something being evil or incompetent, smart money's on incompetent. And that's what I think this is. I wouldn't be surprised if these charges are brought again by a different attorney. We are the most litigious country in the world. 60% of the lawsuits in the entire world are filed in the United States. We're playing a game here with the laws, and it's unfortunate because it tends to drag out and cost a lot of money, but that's the system we created.
Yeah, this was obviously, in my opinion, an attempt to slow things down. This judge was appointed by a Democrat. She's made a bunch of Democratic-leaning rulings. And while, yes, the charges will probably still be refiled, she did buy them some time, and now Comey and James get to sit up there and say that they got a victory and they're fighting back against Trump and his DOJ and yada, yada, yada.
Well, that's what everyone does, but ultimately, I think these charges will be brought again, and then we'll see if they're guilty or not. I don't think this will ultimately make much of a difference to the trial. The facts are the facts. All of these counts for both individuals were some time ago. Nothing's going to really change. Maybe some new evidence is found, but probably not. So ultimately, their day in court probably is still coming.
Well, speaking of fraud, I want to jump into another thing I just saw today. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez recently sent an email soliciting donations asking, will you chip in $5 or anything you can today to help us bring the joy of the holiday season into homes around New York City this year? The link in the email directs donors to a fundraising page on ActBlue with the disclosure that contributions go to the AOC for Congress and are not tax deductible. AOC's campaign reports that they spent about $13,000 at a Bronx food vendor to purchase turkeys for the giveaway. Her campaign says that above their goal, they raised an extra $20,000 to be given to local food pantries. AOC claims this year they distributed over 1,600 turkeys in the Bronx via the fundraising drive. Typically, charitable turkey drives are run by nonprofits or local community organizations and not campaigns. But with this, the money is going straight into a campaign account. Critics say that blurs the line between campaign fundraising and charity. Former New York City Council leader Joe Borelli stated, quote, a campaign is not supposed to be a pass-through for charitable work, and asked hypothetically what would happen if the drive raised far more than needed. Because the solicitation directed people to donate to a campaign and not a charity, the funds are not tax deductible, and there is a lot less transparency about how precisely the dollars are spent. The number of distributed turkeys in past years is inconsistent. The email claimed 600 in 2024, but the campaign video claimed 1,000. So, Matt, why does AOC feel like she needs to lie about turkeys to get campaign money?
Well, she probably doesn't need to, but it's a nice way to potentially get some money from people who probably wouldn't donate to you. Most people are charitable when they're able to be charitable, and they would happily donate a little bit of money for someone to get a turkey or any kind of food. We see this with AOC and many others all the time. This shouldn't be legal, in my opinion, because it does blur the lines. And it is not a straightforward charity. Personally, when I donate to charity, I donate directly to the charity, not a pass-through. I'm not going to hand somebody else money to go donate to a charity because you don't know for sure that the money's going to end up where they claim it is. AOC is a massive hypocrite to me. I mean, this is someone who says tax the rich and says socialism is great while she sells t-shirts that say tax the rich for $58 or something like that. She's got a little capitalist in her, but claims to be socialist.
Yeah, to me, this is kind of like when you're at the grocery store and you're paying and they ask if you want to round up or if you want to give $1 to so-and-so. It's always funny. I always select no on the little keypad, or when they ask, I always tell them no. And the look that you get is always funny, but I'm not going to give you money so you can donate it on my behalf, and then you get the tax write-off. This is kind of like that, but she's also asking people to give her money for turkeys, and it's going into her campaign fund, but then how do we know that she's spending every single penny that she gets for turkeys on turkeys? How do we know she's not taking the extra money and keeping it for her campaign?
Yeah, she probably is keeping the extra money for her campaign. That would be my thought. And I'm a little different than you. When I go to the store and they ask to round up for charity, You have to tell me what the charity is. You can't just say charity. You know, McDonald's, for example, will say, do you want to donate to the Ronald McDonald House? Sometimes I'll do that. These companies do have quarterly earnings, and they are held accountable for that money. But a campaign for a politician is not held accountable for what happens with the money. That's why I would never do this. It's a bit sketchy to me, and AOC and sketchy kind of go together.
Well, moving away from that, there's another thing I saw on the news earlier today I wanted to bring up. So I just so happened to be sitting there and see that some House Democrats on Monday launched a new tracking system to document possible misconduct and abuse during federal immigration enforcement operations under the Trump administration. According to Representative Robert Garcia of Long Beach, who is the ranking member of the committee. As of Monday, the new dashboard listed 252 incidents dating back to January 26th. Each incident is categorized under one or more of the following types of possible misconduct. 1. Concerning use of force. 2. Concerning arrest or detention. 3. Concerning deportation. And 4. Enforcement action at a sensitive location. Incidents involving U.S. citizens are categorized with a U.S. citizen tag. Garcia said in a statement, quote, "Our dashboard shines a light on the harmful actions perpetrated against U.S. citizens and immigrants across the country." Now, what about the incidents against ICE agents? Is Robert Garcia going to just skip over that part? ICE is not deporting U.S. citizens. You cannot be deported if you are a U.S. citizen. I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you don't belong here, you should be deported. You have to do it the right way and wait your turn in line. It's not fair to all the people who came here legally. It makes no sense how Democrats can defend the criminals that ICE is arresting. And the funny thing is, too, the types of possible misconduct are laughable. They use the word concerning. It's subjective. It's all in their opinion what is considered misconduct.
Well, that's the point of it. You can skew data using leading questions. Anything that's somewhat concerning to people can be tagged as concerning, even if there was nothing wrong with that arrest or detention. They are trying to get a maximum number of outcomes or incidences with that tag by keeping it very broad.
It's kind of like back when COVID was around, and every person that went into the hospital, if they passed away, it didn't matter what the underlying health condition was. They could have passed away from cancer, but if they had COVID at the time, it went down as a COVID death.
Well, yeah, and that was for money purposes. They were getting kickbacks from the government for all those cases. With and because are different, and it's the same with this. I find it quite funny that they're categorizing things as with a U.S. citizen. That happens all the time. How do they know for sure that you're legal if they don't ask you? How does the liquor store or the gas station know you're over the age of 21 when you try and buy alcohol if they don't ask you and check your government ID? It's all the same. If you are a U.S. citizen, you have nothing to worry about. When the police show up, when ICE shows up, you listen to what they say, do as they say, and if you didn't do anything wrong, you'll walk free and it'll be a minor inconvenience. If you try and fight it, it helps Democrats because then maybe you can call it a concerning detention or a concerning use of force. It keeps it all very broad, and any incident, whether you're a citizen or not, goes into the count of how many issues there were and how many incidences there were. It all benefits Democrats. What I would like to see is a app launch that tracks people who reveal ICE's location before they're about to do some kind of law enforcement. We should know who the people doxing these ICE agents are. If they dox somebody, they should be doxed themselves.
Yeah, I just think it's funny that we're loading up this database now with all this information about all these concerning uses of force and concerning arrests, but Democrats don't want to talk about the protests that are waiting outside the ICE facilities, the people that are throwing bricks and lighting fireworks and shooting them at ICE agents. Is that not a concerning use of force?
Well, in their opinion, that's against the dictator, so you can use force as long as it's pointed at the right direction. I just find it really funny that, we've heard through the media that Trump's rounding up Americans and deporting them. Have you heard one name of an American citizen who's been deported? And you can't say Kilmar Abrego Garcia because he's not an American citizen. Judges ruled he was an illegal El Salvadoran, but he couldn't be sent back to El Salvador because of gang affiliations and the potential for violence against him, which is why we're trying to figure somewhere else to send him.
I don't know. I say send him back to El Salvador anyway. I mean, think about all the terror that he caused here. I mean, beating up his wife and all that. Send him back. Who cares?
Well, we did send him back. If you recall, we sent him back, and the president of El Salvador threw him in prison. And then it was a U.S. judge who ordered his return. El Salvador didn't care. They would have kept him in prison. Nayib Bukele was in the Oval Office with Trump and was asked, would you consider returning him? He said, return him? I never sent him in the first place. How can I return him? Now, we're moving right along. I was curious, Mike, if you saw Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy's comments. I got a bit of a kick out of this. Duffy said to stop wearing pajamas on airplanes. He said he had noticed a degradation in civility among air travelers and encouraged people to say please and thank you to your pilots and flight attendants and to dress with some respect. This initiative follows a 400% surge of in-flight disturbances since 2019. 400%. I get we're a little anxious. We're flying in a metal tube 40,000 feet above the ground. But anytime you're in a public place with a bunch of strangers, you shouldn't have to be asked to put on something half decent. And I'm not saying put on a 3-piece suit, but maybe some jeans, a nice pair of shorts at least like a t-shirt. You shouldn't go in looking like a slob or showing all kinds of skin. Have some respect for the people around you. Have some decency. Have some modesty. It's unfortunate we've gotten to this point, but that's kind of been an epidemic for a while, and COVID seems to have exacerbated it.
Yeah, so when I fly, now I don't show up in pajamas. I do wear comfortable clothes, though, and part of the reason for that is I want to get through TSA as quickly as possible. Like, when it's my turn and I walk up to the little conveyor belt, I want to be able to throw my stuff up there, whip my shoes off real quick, not have to worry about pulling a belt off and doing all this, that, and the other. I just want to get through the metal detector, slip my shoes back on, grab my bags, and go. Now, again, I'm not wearing pajamas, but I do wear comfortable clothing. But it's nothing that I wouldn't go out in regular public in. No one's looking at me going, oh, wow, that guy didn't even try when he woke up this morning.
Yeah, if you want to wear pajamas on a plane, simple solution. Charter the plane yourself, and then you don't have to worry about other people.
Yeah, my biggest thing that I would like to tell people is if you are flying on an airplane, please take a shower before you go to the airport. Because as you said, we're in a small metal tube with a whole bunch of people around us, and the last thing that anybody wants is to smell you 4 rows in front of us.
Yeah, get the BO under control.
Yeah.
That's just our quick thoughts on that. Now, I also wanted to move on to a story that came up over the last few days. The world's strongest woman has been stripped of their title after it turns out they had the male reproductive organ. Controversial winner of World's Strongest Woman competition was stripped of their title on Tuesday after organizers claimed the American who won never told them he was a man. Jamie Booker was disqualified days after he destroyed the competition at the Strongman Games in Texas. They say the athlete violated the contest rules, which state that athletes must compete in the category that aligns with their biological sex. I first came across this because I found the video of the runner-up, who was UK-based Andrea Thompson. Thompson was filmed storming off the podium after she was raging, saying that this is BS. Because Booker was disqualified, Thompson is now the rightful winner.
So, did you see, or do we know how Thompson found out that Booker was really a man?
Thompson had eyes.
I haven't seen the video. Is it that bad?
I will show you a picture and let you judge for yourself.
What was the weight difference between the two of them? Like, how much more did Booker lift than Thompson? Okay, so Matt just showed me the photo, and that is one burly woman, to say the least. I mean, it's no wonder he won. Jeez. Looking this up here, it doesn't say exactly how much the weight difference was, but the article I found says, despite finishing just 1 point behind Booker and initially placing second to the transgender athlete, the UK's Thompson stands at 5'5" and weighs around 265 pounds, while Jamie Booker is 6'5", 400 pounds.
Yeah, I just looked it up. Booker scored 47 points and Thompson scored 43. That just goes to show, though, that someone with no training, essentially, because I would bet Thompson has been training for this her whole life, and Booker almost certainly has it. At 400 pounds and 6'5", he is comparable to Brian Shaw, 4-time world strongest man. Brian Shaw can lift 1,000 pounds.
Well, Booker probably has been training for a long time with men and losing. That's why he had to switch to the women's side.
Yeah, based on the number of points he scored, he was probably only lifting no more than a couple 100 kilograms in each event. Don't get me wrong, that's impressive. The numbers for Thompson say she was lifting things like 113 kilograms, as well as multiple reps of things that were 50, 60, and 70 kilograms. So Booker must have been slightly above that. But when you consider the world's strongest man lifts far heavier, Eddie Hall deadlifted 500 kilograms. That is 1,100 pounds, which is insane.
Yeah, this just goes to show that there is a difference between men and women. You can't deny it. There's obviously a reason that Booker entered as a woman and didn't tell anyone that he was a man or that he was born a man. I'm sure in his mind he thinks he's a woman for real, but I'm guessing he knew that it would get him disqualified and he just didn't say anything about it.
Yeah, and he almost certainly didn't care about what was fair to the other competitors. How is it fair that the women in the competition had to compete against a man and they didn't even know it? The organizers didn't even know it was a man. But I have a very simple solution. Let's have two categories. Let's have one for biological women, and then we'll have a second category for everyone else. So Booker can compete with all of the men and the they-thems he wants.
Yeah, I like that. I think we should have a men and a women category that's only for that biological sex, and then have a separate category that's for everybody else. And then they can't scream about how they're not included.
But put them with the men, not the biological women. If we put them with the men, they'd almost never win, and we'd never have to hear about this again. Everything's fair, everyone gets to compete, but the rightful winner in both categories will still win.
Yep. All right, well, that brings us pretty close to the end of the show here. We're going to speed through our blind ranking thing and then get out of here. We do want to tell everybody before we finish up, happy Thanksgiving. and we will see you after the holidays. But to round out with our blind rankings, we're going to do a real quick one here. We're going to do the same thing we did the last time. A list of 5 states. Which one would you most want to live in? So, Matt, we will start the list off here for you with Wisconsin.
Not a bad place, but certainly not one of my favorites, so I'm going to go 3.
Okay, going 3 for Wisconsin. Next, you got Maine.
Quite cold. I'll go 4.
Next up is Ohio.
Better. Redder. It did give us J.D. Vance. That's going to be a 1 or 2. I'm going to play it a bit risky and go 2 and leave the top and bottom open.
Okay, number 2 for Ohio. Next, you got Oregon.
5. Easy.
I figured. I think you'll be pretty happy with the list.
Now, if I could move to the greater Oregon part that becomes Idaho, then it would be better.
All right. Well, I think your gamble with Ohio paid off because in your number 1 spot, you got Nebraska.
That's a tough call between 1 and 2, but I'm okay with that. It's close. A lot of corn in Nebraska.
Yep, right in the middle of the country. Well, everyone, once again, have a happy Thanksgiving, and we will see you all next week. That wraps up episode 16 of the Republic Brothers podcast. Leave us a comment if there's anything you want to hear about on the next episode. Make sure to follow us on social media, leave a rating, subscribe, and share this episode with a friend. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.